Why did all of this happen? It happened because a father showed up. When you show up, there's an opportunity to have an encounter with Jesus Christ. Hey guys, welcome to the Andrew Gonzalez podcast. Glad to have you here today. I'm recording this on Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there who are trying to, just trying to raise children. I've found that raising children is not for the faint at heart. I've got two adults that seem to be doing pretty well in life, and so I'm super proud of them. Madison is 21 years old, doing mission work in England. Drew is 19 years old, and he is my youth pastor. And I've got three that I'm still raising. Avery, age 14, who's on our worship team here at the church. And then we've got Croy, who is 3 years old. And boy, you talk about a joy to have him in the home. And then Presley, little daddy's girl, she is going to be one at the end of this next week. So life is just rolling along. I've had a pretty eventful Father's Day weekend. I woke up early on Saturday morning, drove to Russellville. It'd been a while since I'd been to Russellville. Drove to Russellville to be with New Beginnings Church of God. Pastor James Cossey invited me to come and speak at their men's breakfast. And boy, we had a great time there. Rushed back to Hot Springs. It's about a 2-hour drive. And when I got to Hot Springs, my son's father-in-law, they've got a large hill in their backyard. And one weekend every summer, he sets up really an epic water slide. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you a picture here if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube. Go ahead and see this picture. You can see that this looks like a pretty good time, doesn't it? So we showed up. They had some of the daughter's friends over, and parents were there. I don't know if the parents were there the whole time or if they were there just to pick them up. But as I walked into the backyard, I quickly scanned the crowd to see if I knew anybody, and I didn't. Couple of people I may have recognized, but I certainly couldn't place them. The only people I knew in the backyard there were Drew's father-in-law and mother-in-law. And so I was approaching the water slide, approaching the group of people. I was behind them. They didn't even know that I was there. I was carrying a bag. I had Croy with me. I had a pretty large bag because my wife, Haley, packed as if I was taking him to summer camp, even though we were just spending the afternoon there at Drew's family's house. And so as I realized I didn't know anybody there, I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to make an entrance. And so I dropped the bag. Drew's father-in-law had pulled one of these numbers. Oh, hey, Andrew. He was a good distance away. And before I could even say hi, I was running full barrel towards the water slide. Now, the water slide, typically you take a tube. It's just his backyard. So we're, zooming down the grass and the rocks and the different things like that. And at the bottom, if you noticed in the picture, there's hay bales that are set up to kind of pull up the water. I went full barrel, forgetting that I'm now 42 years old. It was like slow motion. I could hear the music ringing in my ears. Dun 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 dun, cha 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 cha. I'm running towards this water slide. I full-fledged Superman this deal. And at some point, my 42-year-old body began to twist on me, and I came down directly on my right shoulder. I hit the ground, and I'm now going 15 miles an hour down this hill, and I'm hitting every rock and every bump along the way. And in my mind, as I'm just making my way down this hill, I'm thinking, did anybody even laugh? Like, was this worth it at all? Because at this point, I knew I was hurt. I get to the bottom of the hill and I'm laying in this pool and I'm looking up. It feels like a mile up the hill is where everybody's gathered and nobody's saying a word. And I'm contemplating life. I know I've cracked 2 ribs because I've done it before. Last time it was a collision at first base with a third grader that I was coaching. I'm sure I've cracked 2 ribs. And as I stand up at the bottom of this hill, my arm, I feel like, is still laying on the ground. And I think this is not good. I grab my shoulder and it is dislocated. It's out of socket. And so I pop it back in socket. And I begin to make my way, take the walk of shame back up the hill, not knowing if anybody even noticed what I had done or appreciated the entrance that I had just made. But I make my way up the hill and I've got to spend some time there with Croy because he's wanting to go down the hill. And anyway, the parents are slowly leaving. That's why we came a little later, was so that we could just spend some time with Drew's family. And we get in the pool. That feels pretty good, and I'm enjoying that. But as soon as I got in my car, I was in major pain. And so I've got these 2 cracked ribs. I've dislocated my shoulder. It's popped out 6 times while I'm there at the house. If I raise my hand up beyond this, it pops out. Tonight, I was wiping a table and it popped out. So I got something going on here. I'm hoping to avoid the hospital, but ladies and gentlemen, this podcast host is in a lot of pain. But that being said, had a great Father's Day. We had a really good service here at church this morning. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I shared this weekend, both with the men's group at New Beginnings and then here at the sanctuary. But I hope you had a great Father's Day. I want to make that clear, and I hope that it was everything that you dreamed it would be. So I want to talk to you about a man named Simon of Cyrene.
Hey guys, I am excited to announce that the Andrew Gonzalez podcast is brought to you in partnership with Logos Bible Software. Guys, this has taken my Bible study to the next level. It's an incredible resource, and I want to share it with you. If you'll click the link in the show notes, I'm gifting you 60 days free for you to explore this resource and get into the Word like never before. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
In the crucifixion narrative, Pilate has given up trying to talk reason into the Jews. 3 different times he comes back to them and says, look, guys, I don't see that this guy has done anything wrong at all. He offers them, to crucify Barabbas and release Jesus. And it's just not working out. And Pilate can't wrap his mind around this. He's befuddled at the way this is going down. Of course, Pilate doesn't understand that this is destiny. Jesus was born to die. There was no avoiding this. But the Bible teaches us that he was flogged. And a lot of times, men who were sentenced to be flogged before the crucifixion, they didn't even make it to their crucifixion. They would die during the flogging. It was so brutal. Jesus is so weak. He's so beaten. He's so battered. He's lost a lot of blood. He's dehydrated. He's probably cramping. He can't carry this cross. It's too heavy. And so in Luke's account, the Bible said that they led him away. And when they did, they seized a man, they being the Roman soldiers. They seized a man named Simon of Cyrene. He's coming in from the countryside. And they placed on him the cross to carry behind Jesus. Now, this is a story that was present in all of the synoptic gospels. You Bible readers know there's 4 gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The first 3, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're called the synoptic gospels. They follow the same timeline. They share a lot of the same stories. They were written, relatively close to each other, where John's gospel, the 4th gospel, was written much later and was written with a completely different style. But here we find that This story is mentioned in all three synoptic gospels. Matthew said that they found a man. Mark and Luke indicate that he was coming out of the country. And so here's what we know about Simon. He was from Cyrene. Now, it's expected that he was a dysphoria Jew. Dysphoria coming from the same word that means dispersed. There were Jews who were dispersed all throughout the Roman Empire, and some settlements were a lot larger than others. This one in particular in Cyrene, which was off of the north coast of Africa, modern day Libya, had a huge settlement of Jews. And it was an economic center. It was right there off the coast of the Mediterranean. There was a lot of ships coming in and out, a lot of trade, a lot of bartering. And so there was a thriving Jewish community there. And in these communities throughout the Roman Empire, they kept their identity, they kept their customs, they kept their religious system. And here it's very likely that Simon was a devout Jew who had made the journey from Cyrene to be at the feast of the Passover. And as he's coming in from the country, they're coming out of the city with this man to be crucified. Now, it's my suggestion that Simon probably had never even heard of Jesus. Most of Jesus' ministry was right there around Jerusalem. You've got Bethany and Galilee and, all of these different places that he went, Bethlehem, the Nazareth, they weren't far from Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, probably the farthest place that he went was Philippi, which was about 120 miles from Jerusalem. In contrast, Cyrene, if you just, as the crow flies, draw a line from Jerusalem to Cyrene, you're looking at 900 miles. It was a long way. And that's just, like I said, a straight line. That's not counting the mileage of a journey of winding roads and the way that you would have to go from Cyrene to Jerusalem. But here's a man at the end of a long journey. He's coming out of the country, and now he's what we would consider a bystander. He has nothing to do with this narrative. He probably didn't know who Jesus was. He doesn't know what they're doing. As he sees them coming out of the city and this man is flogged and about to be crucified, I mean, the first thing that comes to his mind is, wow, we've got a criminal here and I'm about to watch an execution. I mean, that had to be the first thing he thought of. But man, boy, did this story change. And this is par for the course when it comes to the book of Luke. Luke is known for what a lot of theologians call his theme reversals. He kind of highlights plot twists. He shows things that appear to be one way, and then boom, all of a sudden, there's something else. Luke specializes in showing how God takes unexpected things, unexpected people, unexpected characters to teach us kingdom principles. We see in the story of the rich man and Lazarus. From an outside perspective, you see a rich man. He's got all the comforts of wealth. He's got everything he needs. He's got everything he could ever want. Man, it appears that this man is blessed of the Lord. Then you've got a beggar. He's sitting outside his gate. He's got a sign. You look at him, and some of the first things you think is, man, what kind of decisions did he make that brought him here? What did this guy do to end up in this situation? You just kind of draw some conclusions. But boy, if you drew those conclusions in this particular story, you'd be really wrong, because Luke immediately gives us this profound plot twist. Because the Bible says that the rich man died and he opened his eyes in torment. He ended up in hell. And guess where the beggar ended up? He ended up in paradise, in the bosom of Abraham, across a great fixed gulf. It was a reversal. It was a plot twist. You think about the story of the prodigal son. He takes his inheritance and he uses and spends it all on what the Bible calls riotous living. He wakes up one day, he's sitting in a pig pen. The Bible teaches us that he comes to himself. He decides, man, even the servants in my father's home, they have more to eat than I have. They have it better off than I have. And so I'm just going to go to my father's house and I'm just going to be a servant because even they are better off. And so he makes the journey home, and his father, who, is sitting there waiting for his son to come home, he spots him in the horizon and he runs. The Bible teaches us that he runs to him and he embraces him, and plot twist. This is not the way the son expected it to be. He expected punishment. He expected shame. He expected guilt. And instead, he received grace and mercy and complete restoration to his place in the father's home. He grabs a robe and puts it around him, puts sandals on his feet, a ring on his finger. What a plot twist. It's one of Luke's reversals. He talks to us about the first being last and the last being first. He tells us that the humble will be exalted. And then he tells us about this man named Simon, an unexpected character who becomes the greatest role player. I was sharing this with the church today. He becomes the greatest role player in the greatest story ever told. Now, I was born in the 80s, which means I grew up in the 90s. In the 90s and the early 2000s, if you were a basketball fan, we witnessed the greatest role player to ever play the game. His name was Robert Horry, and they called him Big Shot Rob. Robert Horry played for the Houston Rockets. It wasn't his team. It was Hakeem Olajuwon's team. But Robert Horry, in his diminished role as a role player and not a star, he made some clutch shots and they won 2 championships. Then he goes to the Lakers. It wasn't his team there either. He played with Kobe and Shaq. But he hit some huge shots in his career. He was an incredible role player, and he won 3 rings with the Lakers. Then he got traded to the Spurs. And guess what? It wasn't his team in San Antonio either. It was Duncan's team. But man, he won 2 more rings there. And he didn't just ride the bench. He had a role to play. He has more championship rings than Michael Jordan. He's got 7 of them. He was never a star on the team. But it could be argued that maybe they don't win those championships without him. When it comes to the story of the crucifixion, we understand this was destiny. We understand that Jesus was going to do what he had to do, period. But just looking at the narrative, you can say, without Simon, Jesus doesn't make it to the cross. That's how important he was in this story. He carried the cross for him. And so we see in this plot twist, in this Luke's reversal, we see forced compliance giving way to faith commitment. Listen to what Simon does. And before we do that, I want to tell you what Jesus told Simon Peter. He told him, if you want to be a follower of me, you have to do 3 things. You have to deny yourself, you have to take up your cross, and you have to follow me. 3 things. He told that to Simon Peter. Where's Simon Peter in this story? He's nowhere to be found. He's embarrassed. He's guilty. He's ashamed. More importantly, he's afraid. He's in hiding. But there's another Simon that came on the scene. I want to point this out to you. He didn't want to be involved in this. He didn't ask to be involved in this. This was not his plan. He shows up and he's forced. He's forced to carry this. But here's what he does. He denies himself. I mean, this wasn't his will. This is what he wanted to do, what he planned to do. He denies himself. He literally picks up the cross. He places it on his back. And then what do we find him doing? This is what Luke said. They placed the cross on him and he carried it behind Jesus. He followed the Lord. This was our first picture of a true disciple. Jesus had disciples, followers that were with him. This is the first example of what it really looks like to be a disciple. Listen, and I know this is not popular, and I say it a lot. I say it a lot in my preaching. I say it a lot in my teaching. I say it now. I've said it several times in our podcast, and I say it in the book that I've written that's getting ready to come out. This is not popular, but Jesus asks us to partake in his suffering. We market all the attractive parts of the gospel, but there's some unattractive parts of the gospel that are necessary. If we want to experience the attractive parts of the gospel, then we have to experience the unattractive parts. And those unattractive parts are this: I have to deny myself. I have to put Andrew's ambitions aside. I've got to do this. I've got to understand that this is not about me. Life is not about me. Life is about him. Eternity is about him. And if I want to experience all the things that the Lord has for me, there's some things I have to do. I have to participate in his suffering. We do that through the sacraments. I might be a little sacramental than a little more sacramental than a lot of my uh, Pentecostal brothers and sisters. I don't think this is all just memorial. I think the Lord is present spiritually with us. He's present. And so when we're taking the bread, this is why we do communion every Sunday. It's because when we're taking the bread and we're breaking the bread and we're taking of the cup, we are participating spiritually. We're participating in the suffering of Jesus Christ. When we fill up our little baptismal tank, like we have the last, 8 out of the last 9 Wednesdays here at the sanctuary, we are not just celebrating, we are burying. The Bible teaches us that this is a picture of a participation in the death, burial, and resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so there's a cost to this. Discipleship comes with a cost. Denying yourself and taking up your cross. And then we follow Jesus. And that is so important. We've got to follow him. I've been preaching a series on encounters with Christ. And you just, the Jesus comes in contact with the man from Gadara, and you know what his first response to Jesus is? I want to follow you. He comes in contact with Bartimaeus, and he gets his sight, and the Bible says that Bartimaeus followed him in the road. And then he encounters Simon of Cyrene here, and Simon takes his cross, and you know what he does? He follows him. But let me tell you something about Simon. He didn't just carry the cross up the Della Via Rosa and turn around and go home. No, he was moved. And I don't know what part of this moved him. I don't know if it was Jesus hanging on the cross that he carried, who cries out, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I don't know if that moved him, where he thought, what in the world have I done? What cross have I carried? Who is this man? I don't know if it was when Jesus looked at the beloved disciple and said, "Behold thy mother, and mother, behold thy son." And Simon's in the crowd thinking, there's a family being created here. What is going on? What have I done? I've got to talk to this man. I've got to talk to this man who's just been told to behold his mother. I've got to find out what this is all about. But somewhere along the way, this Simon of Cyrene becomes a literal disciple of Jesus. Mark, he's a name dropper. There's 2 different kinds of name droppers in the world. One drops names to impress people, right? They want you to know everybody they know. They want you to know the important people that are in their life. And so they start dropping their names so that you'll be impressed. Listen, that doesn't impress me. I told my church today, that doesn't impress me. The way you treat somebody, now that's what impresses me. But there's a second kind of name dropper. I fall into this category. Some people drop names to connect. If I'm just meeting you, I'm figuring out where you live, where you're from, what you do, and let me tell you something. I'm dropping every name I could possibly think of to connect with you. That's just who I am. I want to make a connection somehow. Mark was a name dropper. He did so to make connections. He did it in the story of Bartimaeus that I preached about last week to my church. Matthew talks about two blind men. Luke talks about a blind man. Mark says, oh, by the way, as he's writing this book to the Romans, his book was written to the Romans who were action-packed and wanted to, he's connecting to them. He's writing this book 40 years after the crucifixion of Christ, and he's saying, there's a blind man that Jesus healed. Oh, by the way, it was Bartimaeus. And the people are reading this like, what? He was blind? I didn't know that. Bartimaeus was a significant character to them. He's a significant person. They knew him, and they're like, man, we know this guy. And here we find Mark doing it again. Because when he tells the story of Simon, he says it much like Luke. Simon was coming out of the country. But then he says, oh, hey, by the way, this was the father of Rufus and Alexander. The Jews are reading this, and they're like, Rufus? We know Rufus. He's a leader here in the church. And the Apostle Paul, he's writing a letter to the Roman church, to the same people that Mark is tailoring his gospel towards. And at the end of his book, Paul, he's a name dropper too, but his are usually he's dropping names to give them salutations and to encourage them and to thank them and all these things. At the end of Romans, he's got this list of something like 40 names, and he's thanking them, and he's telling this and da 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 da. He says, give salutations to Rufus and his mother. Paul is acknowledging the son of this man. Now, what I shared this weekend on Father's Day weekend is, why did all of this happen? It happened because a father showed up. He just showed up. He didn't want to be there. This is not what he intended. He just showed up. And I wonder how many of you men are just showing up to church. Listen, there's no shame in that. I'm glad you're showing up. I want you to keep showing up. But maybe you're like Simon. It's just part of your circumstance. You're going because your wife is nagging you to go. You go because your kids want you to be there. You go because your mom won't leave you alone about it. And so you come to church, and you're there, you put in the offering, you're there, you're this, you're that. But let me tell you something. Just like Simon, when you show up, there's an opportunity to have an encounter with Jesus Christ. And when Simon had this encounter with Jesus that he wasn't planning on having, it changed his life forever. And not only that, it changed his mom's life. It changed his children's life. And now the greatest evangelist to ever walk the face of the earth is giving salutations to his son on one of the most read epistles that you'll find, the book of Romans. And so let me encourage you, show up. It could have generational effects. I think about my grandfather, Pedro Gonzalez. He was a mariachi that played in bars. He met a young woman named Esther, who turned out to be my grandmother. She wasn't into the bar scene. She was a church girl. And so she told him, if you want to date me, you got to come to church. I've said it before, flirt to convert. I don't recommend that, but that's what she did. He ends up coming to church. He gets saved, receives the baptism of the Holy Ghost. In the process, he gets called to the ministry. And this mariachi that was just showing up at church to appease the girl that he was attracted to ends up being an Assembly of God licensed minister for over 70 years. A leader among leaders. He was a presbyter in every section he ever pastored in, through the Central Valley of California, north of Sacramento, in the southern part of California on the coast, in San Rafael, in Los Angeles. He went to Texas. He pastored in El Paso for a while, one of the largest sections, that area. I'm telling you, there's a lot of churches in that section. He was a presbyter there. Why? Because he showed up. And from there, he had a couple of sons that pastored. My dad pastored with the Spanish Assemblies of God for 25 years before he died. I've pastored for collectively almost 20 years. And now my son has picked up the mantle, and he's doing an incredible job ministering the gospel as a youth pastor. And my daughter is serving as a missionary overseas, proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. Let me tell you something. There's something really powerful about a man that just shows up. Thank God for Simon. Thank God for you. I appreciate you coming and checking out this episode. Listen, stay tuned. A lot of exciting things coming down the pike. Got some awesome interviews lined up as we continue our series on the author's angle. I've got several authors lined up to tell their stories. And pretty soon, I'm going to be doing a podcast on my book that is sitting on the editor's desk right now. I can't wait to tell you more about it. God bless you. Thank you for coming. Hey, like, share, and subscribe. Share the show. I appreciate your support so much. And we will see you next time.